Now picture this. You're flying cross country. The airplane starts to sputter. The engine quits. And now you have a forced landing potentially on your hands. There's no airport nearby. There are no grass strips nearby. But thankfully there's a field down below. You can land in it. You pull it off safely, you get out, and now your cell phone doesn't work. Maybe you have Spot or the Garmin alternative, and part of its features work, but not all of them. Or maybe you have what I have, an ACR PLB. Doesn't let you text or call anybody, but it sends out a signal, a pretty reliable signal, to get you help. This video, I want to talk about ACR PLBs and kind of compare them to the Garmin alternative and Spot. Not a huge in-depth, but I'm going to share one of my stories where I use my PLB and other times where I've considered using it or at least having it handy, and why, if I'm going to buy a new rescue device, most likely it will remain consistent being an ACR PLB going forward. So this video is just a nice rundown of my personal take, my feelings. I've got my own notes here so I don't get too off topic. But real quick, let's talk about the PLBs. As you can see, I kind of got my B-roll looping over here, but I'm going to throw that up on the side here now. You can take a look at it. But a PLB is basically a satellite uplink with GPS, and it sends out a signal to get help when you need it. This is something you can carry in your flight bag, you can carry on your person, you can put in your aircraft and keep there, and pretty much overall forget about it, aside from a few things that we'll talk about a little bit later. The PLB can be a life-saving device in a sense that it helps search and rescue find you when you need them. However, it is not a life-saving device like a defibrillator, EpiPen, or one of those other things. It's not going to resuscitate you or anything. It's just going to help people find you where you are. There are some limitations to the ACR PLBs, and there are some things where maybe you might find you want the Garmin products or Spot products over the ACR PLB, depending on what it is that you really do. But size comparison, overall weight, durability, these are all good things that last a pretty good long time, and one of mine are pretty old. You can actually see it from the B-roll that's looping right now that I have thrown up. But in this video, I'm going to give you my story of when I used the PLB, how that time played out, and also it compared to an aircraft ELT as well, because both were active, and I had information from the search and rescue services talking to me over the phone, telling me the difference between the two, which is actually spot on. Then we're going to talk about the size, durability, how to register your product. And this I'm not going to get too much in depth on for the registration because that differs from country to country. Battery life, and PLBs versus some of the others, which I already talked about, and just kind of wrap it all up after that. So before we get into all that, let me share my story and the time that I used this PLB, because I had wished that I had been carrying this one with me at the time, because this is the newer one. But this is the one I had in my flight bag the day that I needed one. Back in about, I'm going to say, so that way no one can find the actual article, but about 5-6 years ago now, I was working for a flight school, and we were out for a training mission. We were doing stall recoveries. This was the third flight of the day. It was getting pretty warm. It was well over 100 degrees on the ground that day. And we're recovering, I think, from maybe a base to final stall recovery practice. We were well up there, 3,500, 4,000 feet. Nice, safe altitude for stall recoveries. When all of a sudden in the aircraft we were flying, the G1000 just starts throwing alarm bells at us, cautions, warnings. Momentarily we get some smoke in the cockpit that we eventually do clear. The engine doesn't produce full power. It's barely producing power as it is. So the initial thought was maybe we can get it back to the airport. Well, between us and the airport was a small mountain. And quickly, as I was going through my memory items, I tasked the student with going through the checklist to make sure I didn't miss anything. We quickly were finding that really it wasn't going to happen. We were not going to get back to the airport, unfortunately. So what we did was we looked around, we found a good field that we could put the aircraft into, and then we started to set up for an off-field landing. As we did that, we cleared the smoke, and things were starting to look better aside from the fact that we couldn't get all of our power back. And then we got smoke again. So we thought, oh, maybe we're on fire. So let's get this bird on the ground quickly. So we focused on the landing. We did everything else we needed to do to get the airplane safely on the ground. We landed, we evacuated the aircraft, and thankfully there was no more smoke. Everything was shut down. There was no fire that we could find. But after that comes the next point of surviving a off-field landing, a crash, whatever you want to call it. And this was not a crash by any means. It was really, at the end of the day, per the FAA, it was labeled as basically an incident. It was basically nothing. It was like an occurrence, really. But a lot of times when it comes to off-field landings or even a crash, it may not be the crash that kills you. It could be what comes after the crash. So it's really important to think about what you have in your flight bag to have people find you and rescue you when you need help. For us, one of the flight school's aircraft took off and came out to find us. It took them a little bit of time, and we were holding sunshades up to try to signal people down. But eventually they did find us, and they were able to help the ground rescue personnel come and get us too. However, that was another story of how long it took them to come get us because of where we landed was a bit difficult to get to with regular vehicles. So we sat out there in the desert for, I think, maybe an hour to 2 hours. At this point in time, when I look back and like the total progression of the time from the engine trouble to landing to being picked up, it's kind of blurry in a sense of the timeline, but everything else I remember pretty well, sitting out there the whole thing. But we waited for quite a while. But in that time period, I activated the aircraft's ELT, and I also activated my PLB. One thing to remember, if you have a PLB, update the registration regularly. And this is something you can do via whatever portal that you need to do for your search and rescue setup. So in the United States, we have NOAA that handles it. We register through them, and then it goes through the actual search and rescue people in those areas, and usually the military, and it goes down the line from that. And they work together with local authorities. Spot and Garmin do something very similar, but what happened in our case was I activated the ELT on the aircraft. I activated my PLB. The radios weren't usable at that point because the ELT bled over the radio, so I couldn't really talk to anybody. However, my cell phone worked, which was great. I was able to contact people with my cell phone, but after a while, I started getting all these text messages. And if you are somebody that's ever used your PLB and never updated your phone number, you already know what's happening with this one. Basically, since they could not reach me on my cell phone, they were calling all of my next of kin on my registration. So you can only imagine, I'm getting text messages from my parents, my siblings, family members that I had registered on there as additional backups just in case the worst case scenario happened. And the questions were, are you okay? Are you okay? Call us. Are you okay? And thankfully, the search and rescue folks went all the way through the line. They talked to family members that then gave them my cell phone number. I spoke to them. But what was really cool about speaking with them was the military people I was talking to help coordinate, which was awesome. But not just that I asked them what signals they were receiving. And I remember them saying the PLB was 2 meters away from the aircraft ELT, which was pretty much spot on. So this tested in the field compared to an aircraft ELT was perfectly matched. And I was happy to hear that. And that's another reason why, even though it would be nice to be able to send messages with these, I'm going to keep going with my ACR PLBs, and why I suggest other people do too. Because some of the limitations for the other products are still limited in the sense of your cell phone is limited. So that's my story about when I used a PLB. The overall time in the desert was probably somewhere from between 1 hour to 2 hours until finally we were rescued, put in the back of a vehicle, and then carried out of there. The aircraft had to wait a while longer, and they had to take the wings off the aircraft and truck it back to a maintenance facility. And thankfully, it was just some basic maintenance they had to do on the aircraft to get it up and running again, and it wasn't anything on us, which is great. So let's talk about overall size of the ACR PLB. Now, I've held the ACR PLBs, I've held the Spot products, I've held the Garmin products, and a few other products, because in the previous years I've gone to Sun and Fun, Oshkosh, AOPA events when we used to have the big AOPA events. And I've had a chance to look at a lot of the other rescue devices. And in the last year or two, I've also been to REI and looked at what they had recently, because I want to go back out hiking and doing adventuring and stuff like that. And I like the idea of having something like a personal locator beacon. What I have to say is the original PLB I have is pretty big. Now, this newer one is a lot smaller, and you can see in the video footage at the beginning, the little one is about the size of a GoPro Hero Black 9, but a little bit bigger. And it's overall works really well for what you need it to do. The other good thing about the ACR PLBs is size-wise, they fit into anything you need them to fit into. So your flight bag, your pack luggage, but I'd be very careful with putting in the pack luggage because it does have a battery in there that you might need to be careful of. I don't think it's a lithium ion, but I'd have to double check. Aside from that though, size of these, they're easily packed, and I think even the new models are somewhere between the Rescue Link and the SAR Link. So they're not huge. When we talk about durability of these products, the antenna is the first thing that I think most people are going to worry about. The antennas themselves are pretty durable though, and the only complaint that I've had, and I've seen other people complain about with the antennas, they are durable, but when you put them back in, getting them just right can be a pain. So maybe after you do a self-test, but when you have the antenna, you put it in your bag, it's easy for something to push it out of its holster, and then it flops out and it's dangling around in your flight bag or in the aircraft, and then it can get damaged. However, after all the years I've had mine, I have never had to replace an antenna. The only things I need to replace now are my batteries, and I need to re-register my products. But aside from that, my oldest one, I don't know if I can get this to really show up on the camera, but my oldest one has no major dings and dents, and I'm shooting it on a camera I'm trying out right now, so please forgive if it goes in and out of focus a little bit. Let's see if I can get the camera to actually focus here. But overall, over time, I have not had any major issues with the case and the antennas with even the old one. And this one has a holster. The other one did come with a holster as well, I think, if I remember. But the smaller one I won at an AOPA event, and I got really lucky. The smaller one, durability-wise, nothing's wrong with this. It has been through hours upon hours of abuse in my flight bag when I was an instructor, and then cross-country flying, building time, and then even now packing it away and moving with it. So durability-wise, the case is strong, the antenna is strong, and all the buttons work after all these years. Registration for search and rescue purposes. So registration, like I said earlier, this is really going to come down to where you live and the authorities that then take care of this for you. The great thing about the way this works is it works with different satellite systems more so than the Garmin and Spot do, and it has a larger constellation to work with, which is great. There are a lot more satellites that it taps into, and the GPS function works nice. And as time has gone on between this one and this one, if I remember correctly, the older one does not have the infrared light. I think my newer one, I'd have to double check, does. And so it's like an infrared strobe that search and rescue personnel will see flashing with an infrared goggles and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. But the registration for the search and rescue purposes is going to come down to where you live. I am not going to run through the overall process because all you need to do is, if you buy one, you follow the steps in your box, or you just go to the registration process on ACR's website. It's super simple, easy. I'm going to put a link in the description below. It never took me more than about 2 to 5 minutes. The first time I did it, about 5 minutes because I want to make sure I didn't do anything wrong. The second time I did it was like 2. After that, battery life and replacement. So I have 2 different units here. My original unit, this one here, the battery expired back in January 2016. That's how old this one is, really. However, they still support it and offer replacements. The newer one, though, that I got at an AOPA event is good until September of 2022. So this one still has life on it. Do shop around, though. I've called different places, and there are different prices for the battery replacement and testing. I've heard some are as low as $100, while others are up to $150. So really take the time, see who's got a good price and who's well recommended. But for the most part, it looks like ACR has certified dealers in the sense of who's been approved to take care of these. Go with those. And while you're at it, I know you probably might find some of these available on eBay and other used sites. But to me, if I'm spending something that might save my life, I'm going to go with something new. And if I need to buy a brand new ACR product, I'm going to buy a brand new ACR product in the future because this is what I'm comfortable with. Battery life and replacement, we just talked about that. PLBs versus other like Spot and Garmin. So the main thing that I'm going to say between an ACR PLB and something just like it from other manufacturers that work into the overall system similar to that of like an ELT you'll find in an aircraft, the main differences here, you have the PLBs from ACR. You have Spot and Garmin products. PLBs work on a larger constellation of satellites. Spot or Garmin products work on a smaller constellation of satellites. However, they work very similar. There is a possibility that maybe the PLB is stronger. They say that it's a larger wattage for this antenna and the radio, whereas with the others, it is a smaller wattage for the radio transmitting to the satellites. However, the rescues have all worked out pretty well for both. And the other difference really here is with the Spot and the Garmin products, you are potentially able, with a subscription and with the proper device, send text messages and other information or receive other information. Whereas with the ACR PLB, all it's sending out is your distress signal. You can't give any description to it. You can't give any specifics about what's happened to you. It's just your distress signal. And they come home in on that. That's it. So if you are somebody that has medical conditions or other issues where you do like to camp, you do like to hike, you go out far distances and need help potentially, maybe the Spot or the Garmin's are for you because if you have the requirements for the ability to send the messages, you'll be able to do that with those. However, with the ACR PLBs, you can put descriptions in of yourself and information that might be pertinent to rescuers. So keep that in mind. And honestly, I think before anybody buys any of these products, you should really think about what your personal limitations are, what your medical limitations might be, and if you do get hurt, what kind of services you think you might need. So you might really want to go further in depth and even call and talk to somebody. Like, I like buying these things from Sporties, Gulf Coast Avionics, Aircraft Spruce, and even REI. REI is another great place to get something like a PLB or rescue device like this because those places have stories. Their customer service agents or salespeople are usually a little bit more trained on these products, or at least usually at each store they have somebody that understands them better. So you might find one really is better for you over the other. For me though, right now, I'm going to stick with the ACR PLBs. And that's really it. These devices are built to do one thing, whereas the others offer a few more options. And I think you aren't going to go wrong unless you have a specific need you have to have for rescue purposes. And at the end of the day as well, remember, since these are reaching out to satellites and trying to get GPS signals as well, they are line of sight. So if you fall down into a crevasse or somewhere that's deeper down and you can't get a line of sight with the satellites, unfortunately, these are not going to work. If you get covered up by something, they're probably not going to work as well unless you can get it out somehow. So keep that in mind of the limitations of these. So overall, for the size, durability, registration, battery replacement, and overall lifespan of this product, I like the PLB. It's expensive at first, but it's cheaper over the long run if you don't need the subscription process that goes with the Garmin's or the Spots. And if you don't need the ability to send those messages out, the PLB is the way to go. And it's going to be my way to go because, to me, the PLB mixed with the cell phone service that I have works really well and is about the same for what I've understood about how Spot and a lot of the other things work. They work hand in hand in a sense. And there are some that have gotten better that have other features. And if you're carrying a satellite phone with you, that's a whole nother story to deal with here. But on the paper and on feature sets, I'm going ACR PLBs. I hope this video helped you guys out. Like and subscribe if you like it. I'm going to keep that one at the end there. But if you guys need any more information, leave it in the comments section below and let me know, and I'll try to help you out. Joe from NDB Aviation, take care, stay safe, stay healthy out there. See you again real soon. Bye-bye.